This is the Halftime Show with Omar Adori on Pulse 95.
Sure is that time. It's the Halftime Show with Omar Adori. I'm your host, covering everything sport, international and local. Hope you're having a blessed day. We got a lot to cover on the show today, and actually one of the questions I'm asking for the day is, should there be a curriculum for dealing with pressure, especially when it comes down to mental health? Text us on 4215 Ittasalat or slide into my DMs at Omar Duri and let me know, and we'll cover it throughout the show, because that's the theme of the show today. We've been listening to a lot of the best athletes in the world who are coping with a lot of pressure, and in that situation putting their mental health at stake. And so with that happening, we kind of ask, how are they expected to deal with that kind of pressure if they haven't been taught how to do so? So that's the first thing. Following the celebrity fight night the other night in the UAE, I had some takeaways from that, being there live, watching, YouTubers and celebrities step in the ring as fighters. How did they prepare for such a big occasion? How it went? What was it like as a spectacle? And when we actually sat down, what did we make of the event? So that's coming up. Simone Biles opens up about her withdrawal from the earlier stages of the Olympics, but she will come back for one more round tomorrow. But which camp are you in? Are you for her withdrawing, or are you for her returning? And also, is she right to do so? Should she continue? And is it her fault, or is it the fact that society has so much pressure on our modern day athletes? In the health and fitness segment, why isn't it cool to prehab instead of rehab? Think about that question as well. Old is gold and slow is boring, but why do we always neglect prehab exercises? On the only place to be at 3, the Halftime Show on Pulse 95.
This is the Halftime Show with Omar Al-Duri on Pulse 95.
It sure is that time. It's the Halftime Show with Omar Al-Duri. I'm your host, covering everything sport, international and local. Right, okay, let's get stuck into it. So, over the weekend, I actually went to the first celebrity YouTube fight in the region, in the Middle East and in the UAE. I went down to watch it. Shout out to TK for organizing the event. And there was a lot coming into this fight, and these fights actually, because it's not everyone's cup of tea. There's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes, stepping into a world of your own. But this is what I took away from that night. My takeaway from that night is these YouTubers or celebrities, are used to the limelight, are used to the shine, are used to being in the front line when it comes down to exposure and media. And that's how they made their name. And it was all evident because the fact that once they were being introduced to the ring on their walkout, it wasn't records we were talking about. It wasn't, 10 fights, 4 wins, etc. It was how many followers they had. So that was kind of like the first thing. Then you start to think of things in a different manner. And here's how I saw it. Once you step in the ring, there are crowds. There are people chanting for you, against you. Some people want to see you win, and some people want to see you get knocked out. And that's exactly what you could tell from these YouTubers coming into the ring. But once that bell goes, you step into a world where you're going to get hit. This is no joke. And I said this before. I said, as much as, some people say it's bad for the sport, some people say it's good for the sport. My takeaway is you've stepped into a situation now where you can't just get out, and the pressure gets to you, and millions of people are watching you, and social media are going to share and tweet and record what's going to happen. You get punched in the face, they could meme that for the rest of your life. And most of the time, it's adrenaline that's going through your veins and your blood, and everything's going crazy. But I felt sorry for one of the fighters that night who realized how big the spectacle was and how much pressure there was. And to be fair to him, after the fight, he stepped out and said, the nerves got to me. And that's where let's say the laughing stops, so to speak, because as much as we're there to have a good time and see these people entertain us, I felt sorry for the kid. And that's what he is. He's a kid stepping into a world that's unknown, and also you can't teach someone how to handle that. And this is the theme of the day. The question that I asked today is, should there be a curriculum for dealing with pressure? And that goes hand in hand with what we're hearing about the mental health and how we're hearing about, people handling and dealing with pressure differently. So when I saw that kid, step out of the ring, he didn't really put much of a fight on, because I think it got to him and he froze. And that's never nice to see, because we all reach a point where, our brain tells us something, our body's telling us something. You're hearing people chant all sorts of things, and it's fight or flight, and he froze that day. And I think, the MC said it best. She said, it takes a lot of bravery for you to step into the ring. And he's like, I will be back. Now, if he does come back, then hats off to him, because that was petrifying for him. Looking at the other fights, we saw people step in there. We saw Adam Saleh step in there with Sharks. Waleed Sharks, I think his name was, Iraqi fighter. He's 17. That was my favorite fighter, to be honest. Patient, skillful, young, didn't rush it against Adam Saleh, who there was apparently beef going on between them, and they were trying to sell the fight, but glad to see there was some respect, at least a little bit of respect throughout that. And I watched those two. In fact, that was my fight of the night, more than Money Kicks versus Anas Al-Shayeb, more than those two, which they went to decision and Money Kicks won. But I really liked the Waleed Sharks fight versus Adam Saleh. I thought that was really good, because most of the time, again, like I said, how are you supposed to expect these guys to fight like boxers when they've had a month or 2 months training? And people dedicate their lives to it. You're looking at the Olympics right now, and I was talking to my boy Frank earlier at the gym, and he was saying there's knockouts happening at the Olympics. People are hungry. It's a different level now. It's a stage where COVID's hit people in a way that this is make or break. So then now you fast forward it to the YouTube fights I was watching, and you're seeing like people swinging arms all over the place, etc. But that's, it's entertainment. That's what they're up for. But when I watched the Waleed Sharks fight versus Adam Saleh, I thought just jabbing, being patient, moving side to side. I thought, okay, we're getting somewhere. And yeah, that was my takeaway from it. But I think more than anything, I think the pressure that is on these people. Today I heard about Tyrone Mings, a friend of the show's, talking about his mental health and how he was affected when, he got called up for England and people said he wasn't going to be good enough. I thought, that's, even these athletes who are larger than life, we see on TV and they got millions and millions of views and people following them and etc. Even they feel it because they're humans at the end of the day. And I see that. I see Simone Biles, which we're talking about in the next segment as well. Another person who is stepping in and out of this situation. We're arguably the best gymnast in the world, and yet she's feeling it. She stepped away from everything, and now she's going to come back in for one more round, and that's tomorrow. But what do you guys think? Should there be a curriculum for dealing with pressure? 4215 Ittasalat or slide into my DMs at Omar Al-Duri. We're going to take a break. The music's on point today. Otra Noche Sin Ti by J Balvin and Khalid. Enjoy this, folks. I'll see you right after this. Don't go anywhere.
This is the Halftime Show with Omar Al-Duri on Pulse 95.
It sure is that time. It's the Halftime Show with Omar Al-Duri. I'm your host, covering everything sport, international and local. So the question of the day I'm asking today on the Halftime Show is, should there be a curriculum for dealing with pressure, with all the stories that are coming up recently about mental health in sport? But if they aren't being taught that and there's no education on it, then how are they expected to deal with it? Florin has come out with some fire on the Instagram live at Omar Al-Duri saying, health comes first, absolutely, but if you don't compete, then you really should be disqualified. Part of training in any sport is mental discipline, and to me, Osaka and Biles were unprepared for the tournament. Florin coming out with the fire. He continues to say, sprinters don't just sprint during training, they do a multitude of other things. I think they are tough, but perhaps enjoyed the perks of sporting fame a little too much, and we're not disciplined enough to prepare for the events. Very, very good point. Florin is tuned in all the way from New York. My Nigerian brother actually went to went to college with me. and always on point on the halftime show. But here's the situation that I'm kind of putting you guys in. If these athletes have not been educated on how to cope with pressure and deal with it at the highest level, then is it a surprise that they are feeling their mental well-being right now? We've talked about physical health and we've talked about mental health, but mental fitness is something that you need to continue to practice in order to actually be able to cope with situations that put you through fight or flight. And the way that the brain works is very interesting, but also very intricate. There's so many factors in there. There's such fine details that we sometimes miss and don't have answers for. And so with seeing Simone Biles opening up about her withdrawal from the Olympics early stages, which camp are you in? Do you agree with her? Is she right to do so? She will continue, but should she have continued at the time? Or is it even neither? Is it the fact that coaches, including myself and people are out there, need to spend more time with their athletes to get their mental fitness right so they can cope with it? I mean, I went and watched the celebrity YouTubers fight the other day, but as soon as they stepped into a boxing ring, that's it. You can't see how much goes through someone's brain at that point. So I was very interested to see how that would work. And Simone Biles is arguably the best, if not one of the best in the world. And she defended her decision to withdraw from the early Olympic competitions on her Instagram, explaining that she was still struggling from what is known as the twisties and isn't sure if she'll be able to compete in individual competitions scheduled for the week, but she will be returning tomorrow. So we know that. I think they announced it today or early this morning. She pulled out of both the team final and the women's individual all-around at the Tokyo Games to focus on her mental health. And Team USA won silver in the team event, and Biles' teammate Sunny Lee won gold in the individual. And I'm kind of looking at that and I'm thinking, we saw what happened with Naomi Osaka, and we're seeing more and more athletes, but is it our responsibility to make sure their mental fitness is right? I think that is... It's easy to point fingers at athletes, but behind the athletes are coaches, are parents, are people that look after them, their managers, their agents, their social circle, their friends. So there's a bigger responsibility than just those people. And we heard about Tyrone Mings as well this morning, talking about being called up for England and people saying he wasn't good enough. Florian continues to say, if it was the first time on the scene, then sure. But then they are both champions and won at every level. So what's the difference? No fans? I mean, fans play a big part. Again, it's easier on the outside for us to comment. Florian, you played at a good level, with me, at college football, and we had a lot of pressure on us, including the previous captain. I stepped into a team for tryouts with 50 people trying out. The pressure was real. Florian was there trying out the same day. The captain didn't like me. And the rest is history. We won't talk about that now. Question, how many events have they participated in before the Olympics or French Open? Wins, losses, hard games, all of that should help you build a discipline. Again, I'm with you 100%. You guys agree with Florian and what he's saying. I'm with him 100%. I get what he's saying. I understand the dynamics of what you're saying, but I also think that mental health and mental fitness is not something you can just achieve and then lock it in the diary and say, that's it, I'm done. I think they've got to continue to practice it because you forget. Your body forgets. Your mind forgets. Your emotional intelligence forgets what it feels like to be in those situations. So yes, while I do see where Florian's coming from with the kind of old school Roy Keane mentality, I'm also one of the trying to study the new school as well. That makes me sound old. But trying to study the new school as well and trying to understand, what goes through their mind and what pressures they are facing. And I think that's why the question of the day is, should there be a curriculum for mental fitness, for dealing with pressure, for their mental health? Because we keep hearing all these athletes discuss it. It's a very, very good topic. Keep it locked here. We're going to play some Majid Jordan and we'll be right back with Waves of Blue. Here we go.
This is the Halftime Show with Omar Adori on Pulse 95.
It sure is that time. It's the halftime show with Omar Duri. I'm your host, covering everything sport, international and local. Shout out to everyone who is tuned in. And the topic of the day is, should there be a curriculum for dealing with pressure when it comes down to mental health, mental fitness, mental well-being? Through all these stories we're hearing with some of the most incredible established athletes at the moment, is it their fault or is it our fault as coaches? And we should be more responsible to educate them about how to cope and handle pressure. Okay, right. So, if you missed the show, don't worry. You can catch up all our podcasts, if I can say that properly, all of our podcasts on Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, or if you like what you see, head over to the YouTube channel and check out the Pulse 95 radio page, and we've got all of our episodes there with all the fantastic presenters on Pulse 95. Right, okay, the health fitness segment is on now, and one of the questions through things that we've kind of reviewed recently is, why isn't it called to prehab instead of rehab? Now, let me break that question down. Rehab is often something that when you actually get injured or when you feel something and you're not 100%, then you go to a physio or a doctor or a specialist and they give you exercises to rehab, to get back on track. Prehab, on the other side, is something that prevents you from doing it, but it requires patience and requires you to involve it in your daily schedule. Why isn't it cool? What is it with things that are like that normally, let's say, puts us off, gets us not interested, we don't have the patience to do it? And that is probably one of the best things to manage your long-term goals. And I speak from experience when I say this, but old is gold and slow is not boring. And that's something that, sometimes we get away with when you're younger, or let's say, when you're younger, you get away with it. And then when you start to feel the wear and tear on your body, you think, I wish I could have done that. So if you had someone in your corner now and they said, what would you do differently to a younger version of you? I'd definitely involve prehab. And it's one of the 5 dominoes in Reset when we talk about recovery, is managing your body through any sport you do. If you like going for a run, if you like boxing, if you like playing football, basketball, tennis, whatever it is you want to do, if you're not doing your prehab, then probably you're going to wait till something happens for you to spend that time on managing and recovering. And that is a huge factor when it comes down to the prehab segment. But the health and fitness segment normally has a lot of people saying, I knew that, but do you do it? And Jim Quick said it best: we all know what to do, but we don't always do what we know. And that is 100% correct, and I can relate to it. Can you relate to it? Text me on 4215 at the Salat Urdu, or slide into my DMs at Omar Duri. And the question of the day is, should there be a curriculum for dealing with pressure when it comes down to mental fitness, mental health, and mental well-being? Let's take a quick break. What's this? Sam Smith, Baby You Know Me Crazy. Here we go, enjoy.
This is the halftime show with Omar Adori on Pulse 95.
It sure is that time. It's the halftime show with Omar Duri. I'm your host, covering everything sport, international and local. Shout out to Kareen, Mustafa, Maria, Masoud, Florin, Francie, Emrooney, Masoud, of course, I said that, Shaymat, and everyone else who is locked in with me on the halftime show for the hour, the only place to be at 3. Right, taking in some of your questions at the moment. And if you're just tuning in, the question of the day is, should there be a curriculum for dealing with pressure when it comes down to mental health, mental fitness, and mental well-being? Really, really good topic that we're diving into today. Some really good things, especially from Florin and Masoud, who dropped some bombs today on knowledge on that topic. Right. In that, we also discussed Simone Biles opening up about her withdrawal from the Olympics, at least the early stages, but she is returning tomorrow. Was she right to do so? Has Naomi Osaka set a trend by withdrawing herself from the French Open and also Wimbledon? Do we want to see, let's say, some more coaching when it comes down to this, how to handle that kind of pressure? And maybe if these athletes were, taught at a young age how to handle pressure. I went to watch the celebrity YouTube fight on Friday, and most of them, are used to being in the limelight, but being in a stadium and having a crowd and having people chant for you, against you, wanting to see you win, wanting to see you get knocked out, there's a lot of pressure that goes on behind it. And I was speaking to Fahad about this the other day, who's also an avid listener, and that kind of pressure you can't teach. As a coach, you can teach them the game plan, you can stick to a strategy. The moment they enter that ring, everything goes out the window. As Mike Tyson said, we've all got a plan until we get punched in the face, and it takes a specific type of person to enter a ring. And that's why the respect to those who spar, who train, who put the hours in fighting professionally. It's not for everyone. And as you've heard a lot of fighters say, you don't play boxing, you don't play fighting. It's serious. It's a serious game when it comes down to the fight game. It's 100% on, your life is at stake. We've seen so many injuries, people breaking their legs from MMA, snapping the leg in front of us. People, suffering from dementia and brain damage when it comes down to boxing and all sorts of stuff. So that's kind of like what brought that on board. And in the health and fitness segment, we also spoke about why isn't it cool to prehab instead of rehab? That's speaking from experience at the moment. Now, as you can tell, slightly different wardrobe change today, and we're kind of happy with it, but we're also taking our time. Shout out to Miffy for that, looking after us as always. But yes, I kind of look at it as this. If some of the finest athletes on the planet struggle, okay, and like Florin alluded to earlier, they struggle, they've won championships and they've been at the highest level and they're still struggling, what can we do to enhance that? What can we, and it's not just for athletes, it's for everyone, but what can we do to help them get through it and get through situations where their mental health isn't at stake, where they don't feel the rush of being at the top and then the drop of coming down? I remember coming back from the World Cup and I was on such a high and some people messaging and everything, and then all of a sudden silence. No one's talking anymore. It's very, very quiet. You want to be active, you want to do things, but you don't know if you're still the same person. You kind of lose confidence because it was such a high. And I see people like Tyrone Mings discussing it today, people like Naomi Osaka, people like Simone Biles talking about it. And where's their head at? Where are they? Do they feel they need that gratification from people? Do they feel they need, people to be able to discuss and talk about these things? It's a very, very close topic, and it's not for everyone to be able to have, let's say, the courage to discuss. And if you saw the show the other day, we had Nidal Moura, who was talking about ADHD, an athlete, an artist, and someone who himself has been through quite a bit, but very talented. So if you did miss that show, make sure you check it out. We are reaching full time on the halftime show. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. I will be back on Wednesday, the same time, same place, on the only place to be at 3, the halftime show on Pulse 95. See you in a bit, folks.
If you liked this episode of The Halftime Show, drop a like and subscribe.
95.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram for all our daily updates and top stories.